Hello.
Hello. I
Hello.
heard.
Hello.
Welcome to our first podcast.
I
Well,
know.
I know
It's
this is
so awesome.
we have a nice sheet here from Dominic, so thank you, Dominic. So why don't we start? Introduce ourselves and kind of what we want to accomplish. Dominic, do you want to start?
sure. My name is Dominic Sisley. I work for Think Minnesota Realty. I've been at the brokerage for a few months after Dave and I connected a couple years ago. So I work with Dave now. Um, and we're thinking a lot about the podcast and why we might do it. And for me, it's one of those things that I think I like to educate people how to problem solve, and I think this is a good way to kind of help both maybe agents and consumers get a little bit more in depth on the real estate world and how we think about it and how we bring value to clients and just the industry in general. So for me, those are kind of the big main themes around why I think this might be a valuable source. And I think having a few experts, and we all live in kind of different parts of the state here, bring different perspectives on how we approach the market. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Michael.
Well, my name is Michael Stanton, and I have my license at Lake Sotheby's International Realty. I'm in my 10th year. I came from a much larger brokerage, but when I was invited to join Sotheby's, I did so because it was more of a boutique feel, very heavily service oriented. And I came out of a previous career into real estate 10 years ago. I spent my entire career up to this point in medical device sales. And I started in a very humble, disposable position and ended up in cardiac surgery as a heart valve and structural heart rep. So it's been a big switch, but I really like it. And I am really excited to do the podcast for many of the same reasons as Dominic. Just educating the public in terms of, you know, how complicated a real estate transaction can really be. It might look really simple to the outsider, and all we do is open doors and collect money. But I can assure you that is not the case. And all this gray hair on my head, it is also proof that it's not the case. But I just think it's really important for people to kind of have the veil pulled aside and have us just discuss things back and forth. And three heads are a lot smarter than one, and we all have different experiences and different approaches, but the goal is the same, and that is to get the transaction done.
My name is Dave Lilja. I'm the broker and owner of Think Minnesota Realty. I think, Mike and I have been talking for years. I mean, 8, 9 years, maybe, Mike,
Yeah, probably.
7. And sometimes once a week, sometimes a couple times, sometimes we take a week off. We have great conversations about this industry. Sometimes he goes left, I go right. Sometimes we're both on the same page. Sometimes we're both completely against the grain. And to me, the idea of having Dominic on board, who's new with us, but I have similar conversations with him, I thought the three of us could really have a lot of fun, maybe share some insights. Um, I think I'm in my 13th or possibly 14th year. Like Michael, I came from another brokerage before I started this one. I was actually at two national brokerages, and I have this huge fear of being on camera. I've never done on camera before, and so this is kind of a great way, I think, to kind of pioneer it. So, some things that maybe Michael wasn't aware of. We're going to do some rapid fire questions,
Oh, well,
and then
Dave,
we'll go.
you have a face for television and a voice for radio.
I have no idea what that means, but okay. Mike, pick a number, one, two, or three.
Three.
Three. How would you describe today's market in real estate? You.
Swift. It's moving swiftly. There is not much time for people to make decisions. It's changing rapidly on the professional side with the new regulations nationwide that we up here in Minnesota have been following for 35 plus years. So I don't know anything differently.
Okay,
That's it.
Dominic.
I would say, I mean, on the similar line, but kind of evolving. With the height of the pandemic and things were moving swiftly, and leaving people with little time to make big decisions. I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift now, given the state of the state and kind of just trending inventory, things like that. But I think now more than ever, it's really valuable to have someone working alongside you, kind of helping you through that process because things are moving swiftly and they are evolving kind of in real time.
I think for me, I would describe it as controlled chaos at times. Um,
Mhm.
I think that the consumer comes to us because they either have a need that's immediate or they have a dream or a plan. And I think with the new regulations, I think with the election, I think with weather, I think we have the holidays. I think there's a lot of people that don't know where to go. And I think that causes the chaoticness to it. Um, but I do agree that with good professionals and stuff, people can get through. But I think it's a confusing, chaotic time for a lot of people. People hear all the time interest rates, but I don't know if they really understand interest rates,
Mm.
or how it affects them or what the possible long term can be. I think there's a lot of people that sit on a couch and give their opinion what people should do with their money. And I think it's hard. I think it boils down to the consumer. So that's kind of my thought.
Hmm.
Yep.
Mm. Were you going to add on that, Dominic?
No, I was thinking about Mike's point earlier that I think some of the perception of a realtor is that you open the door and you collect a check at the end, and I think um, you know a good realtor maybe makes it feel that way. If their client is, there's chaos going on behind the scenes, but really the realtor's kind of back there making sure everything goes smoothly, and it can feel chaotic. But I think helping communicate to your client in a way that they don't feel that chaos, but they have that kind of helping hand is what makes an agent someone that they want to come back to.
Can I add on?
Yeah, please.
The other thing is, because I spent almost 20 years in surgery, the first 10 was in neurosurgery and spine in the operating room with the doctors, with our devices, and then the second half was in cardiac surgery. I mean, I was in some pretty, um, we we used to call them sphincter moments. Like we were in some pretty scary situations as a rep. But the thing is, um, in my opinion, and I think it's important to say this on this podcast because when I say this to my counter realtors, they don't believe me. But anyway, I came into this like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a piece of cake. I am like a national award-winning cardiac surgery salesperson. This is going to be a piece of cake. I got undressed by real estate initially. It was a hard switch for me to come out of corporate into the real estate world. And in all reality, this is the part that people don't believe me. This is the hardest thing I have ever done in my life.
Why?
Number one, we are dealing with um, contracts, legal binding contracts. We are not attorneys. We are dealing with large sums of money. We are dealing with people's sometimes every last penny that they have. They are pushing into the pot to buy their first property. They, the buyers are looking to us as guides. The seller is also looking to us as guides. And the thing that is probably one of the most frustrating things to me is real estate is one of those classic armchair recliner Saturday quarterback kind of deals. Like everybody thinks they know how to sell real estate and everybody wants to give the realtor advice on how they should do this, and yet they've never done it. They've never taken a test. They've never done a transaction. There's a lot of moving parts. I came into this like 1 + 1 = 2. That's just the way it's going to work. And that is not how real estate is. I don't expect problems, but when the problems arise or the road bump shows up, we just problem solve and we get through it. And it could be every single day. But you're going to problem solve and you're going to get through it. And you're going to keep everybody calm and relaxed and upbeat and positive, and we're going to get through it. It's hard.
I think it brings up an interesting point that number one is we aren't attorneys. This is
No.
not necessarily meant to be a podcast about what you should do. Is hopefully this is going to be more of a experience based.
Mhm.
Should we say this is not financial advice? Is that
This is
fair to say?
not financial advice.
Probably should
And
work
it's
on a disclaimer.
and it is not legal advice either.
That's right.
For
That's right.
for somebody joining us, this is our first podcast of our yet to be named podcast. So those are probably good disclaimers. I think what's interesting is a lot of times Mike and I talk, it's about like, well, what if this? What if that? Here's what I got. Here's what I heard. Here's what I read. Here's what's going on in Connecticut. Here's what's going on in Illinois. Um, it is really, I think, difficult. And every transaction, I think, is different. I've brought on a lot of new agents to our brokerage or to our team. And it's funny, like you can say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and this is going to be my wheelhouse. It's going to be this community, or it's going to be this home. And it's always the different. You always get something 50 miles away and it's land versus a house. So you need as an agent to have somebody that can help guide you. You need to have a sparring partner that can work with you and guide you and get you through it. This is a very interesting career field, and
Mhm.
like Mike's old field, like you know, where they're having to make life and death situations, we're helping guide people and make the decisions. Um, I like that. So Dominic's question that he sent us, and then maybe I'll start, is the word value. I love that word because it transcends so many different things. How do we provide value? Is value saying what a property is worth? Is value saying what we do and we define ourselves? Is it about defining the client and how important they are, that they're right and we're the guide and they're the lead? Um, that's such a great word that I don't think gets mentioned enough in our business. And yeah, I'll just kind of stop there. And Dominic, you threw it out. When you hear that word, where do you go?
For me, it's I always want to be adding value, or I try to add value in any kind of situation I'm in, right? So if I don't add value, then I'm just going to kind of be the guy that just shuts up and lets the experts roll with it. So when I'm in the role as your realtor, I think of value, can be kind of case by case. A lot of times, working with folks that have never bought a home before, or it's been 30 years since they bought or sold. I think the value is kind of laying out the process, reminding them of all the steps, and then being that kind of coordinating thread throughout, with dealing with lenders and title companies and, contract issues and things that come up during a transaction. So I think about value as, those things kind of first and foremost. And then I also just think there's value in, the low level stuff. It's like be the person that answers the phone when they call or responds to a text, within a reasonable time frame. That people find value in that. And I think it's comforting to have someone that's good at communicating. You guys are kind of referring to previous roles you had. I worked in kind of client services before this, so account management, client services, and so I put a lot of value on being that services oriented type, agent that's going to go kind of above and beyond, even just deciding what the process is and kind of helping, holding your hand, but giving you proactive ideas and different ways to think about this and negotiation. Just getting out from the square box that sometimes people want to live in terms of how to get from A to B. But that's, I don't know, kind of very, I guess, 10,000 foot view. But I think value can be, each client is going to have a different perspective on how you bring them value. But I think being able to provide value in a few different methods and ways is kind of where I like to read folks in the transaction and decide, where to ramp it up or down in certain areas.
Michael?
Um, you know, I believe that we are paid basically to the amount of value that we bring. And I think that goes outside of real estate too, but value can have so many different things. Number one, the tenure of me being in real estate and that I have been a producing realtor, putting numbers on the board realtor, adds value because I have a lot of experience and I have a lot of anecdotal stories that I can share to help people make decisions. As a new agent, you still have that because you have your brokerage and your mentor that you can use that information. But coming from the medical device world, I mean, I represented a product that got a premium because it was the gold standard, and I was accustomed to sometimes, a lot of times, getting the most money because it was what it was and it did what it did and it had the clinical papers to prove it. The thing is with real estate is this is a market. So one of the value adds we have is, you might want X for your house. Your neighbor might have gotten X for theirs. Your brother might think your house is worth X, but the reality is it's only worth what the market says it's worth. And the only thing you can control in terms of that market is the condition of that property and how it shows. So value add is just telling people what they need to hear in a professional, quote unquote, loving manner instead of telling them what they want to hear. And that was a hard thing for me to learn how to do because I don't like conflict and I'm a people pleaser. But if it gets to the point that you, they're hiring us to help them, so my value is to tell them what they need to know.
Do we work with our client or for our client?
Well, I think we work for our client because with agency, we actually have fiduciary responsibilities. So, yes, we are working for them and they can terminate our relationship. But, and we also work
Wait, but
with
and?
them. I know that's that
I don't
old
know if that's
That
proper.
that's that old big box thing. Never don't say but. We said and. So I corrected my but to an and. So
Okay, but
I
it
work
wasn't a run on. It was
okay, yeah.
information.
I corrected myself from saying but to and. So I work for my clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, and I also work alongside them, with them. It's a combination of that, both.
What do you think, Dominic?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think in the strict definition of the term, we work for them, right? Like they've hired us to do a job. We're getting compensated for that job. We have the fiduciary responsibility to them. But I think in a lot of places, they're looking for us to kind of lead and be that person to bring them along. So I think a lot of it is working with them, and we can always advise and we can give our opinion, and but they don't have to take it, right? So I think that's the working with part. Is I can tell you, I think your house is going to sell for X, but you think you're going to get Y. So it's not like you have to do what I say, but I'm here to give you my opinion, and then you can decide and take that information what you want to do with it.
All right, rapid fire number two, Dominic. Question one.
Uh,
Question one or question two?
let's go one.
What's more important for a successful closing? A good title company or a good lender?
Mm, great question. Uh, I think lender in a lot of my experience uh, is is really valuable. I've had ones that are really engaged and they really help things kind of go smoothly when they're engaged and on both sides, talking with you and their client, right, who you might share. And I've had lenders that don't want to engage at all, and it just creates a gap, a knowledge gap, a communication gap. Uh, and there's probably some similarities with title company, but I think the lending piece is just there's something to that unlocks the rest of it. And without a really good lender, I think that for me, I would if I had to pick one or the other, I would go lender.
Michael?
I am in Dominic's camp. I am choosing lender. I don't think a good title company can outwork a bad lender. And I'm sure we all have terrible, terrible stories. I can think of one where a closing was delayed 4 separate times, and it was all lender related, which is how I started learning about lenders that have overlays and lenders that have their own underwriting and all kinds of things. But the last time this closed, they literally didn't tell us that it wasn't going to close until I was literally in the office and I had driven a half an hour to get there, and so did the title person. And the lender was actually golfing and it didn't seem very fazed by the whole thing. But lender, lender, lender.
All right, Mike, rapid question. You get to ask a rapid question, and then Dominic.
Oh, you didn't tell us this.
It's
I
a
didn't
rapid
part.
question. If I would have
I
told
didn't
you, it would have been
participate.
a passive
Oh
question.
my goodness. Okay.
This is why
Um,
people are going to tune into our podcast is because of the uniqueness.
okay, I got you. Is it a good idea to have a seller whose house is not ready for market just say, that's it. This is how we're going on the market. I'm not doing a darn thing. Not doing a darn thing. It is what it is. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Why?
Dominic, do you want to start? Or do you want me?
So I'm just so understanding, the house isn't necessarily ready to go, but they just want to be in the market.
Yep.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Is it a good thing or a bad thing and why?
It's a bad thing, and I think a lot of it goes back to our other conversation around value. I think Mike, the last time we talked, we were talking about staging and kind of
Hmm.
the value that can bring to somebody.
Hmm.
If the house isn't ready to show, people aren't going to pay what it's could be worth potentially.
Hmm.
So I think you're just shooting yourself in the foot and costing yourself money by not taking the right steps to get on the market, even if it's a week or a month or 2 months later than what you really wanted. That I think it's smart to take those steps before you go.
Can I ask one follow-up question to my rapid fire?
Only if it's rapid.
So if they say, nope, not doing it, what do you do? Go on or walk away?
If it's me, again, we're in this relationship where they still have the choice to do what they want. It's up to me whether I want to take the listing. I guess at that point, um, I'll probably give them my thoughts and still continue to work with them. But at least have shared my opinion that I think you should be doing X Y Z before you go live, and then it's on record that's the case. But you know that's my kind of perspective.
Okay. I like that fiduciary of lawful obedience.
I, the way that you phrase the question, I find it interesting. My answer is you take the listing and you work with what you have. I've been doing this long enough that sometime a seller can't do anymore, whether
Mhm.
it's emotional, whether it's economic, whether it's physical. I think if you communicate their options, they get to choose. We talked earlier about being a guide, let them choose. We, this year, we have done through my business partner, Randy. Randy has done quite a few listings this year where he has personally paid for some um, updates for a listing,
Mhm.
and we have it where he gets reimbursed at closing.
Mhm.
We don't do those a lot, but I think there's a story to tell.
Mhm.
The seller needs help. I mean, we're in the help business, I think, more than I believe we're in the help business more than whatever gets communicated.
Mhm.
I think that sometimes people are in over their head,
Mhm.
whether that's through getting the property through a death, having a sale because of a divorce,
Mhm.
having to sell because of economic reasons. I've had several clients that are underwater, and the thought of saying you need to do these four things, they're struggling to make the payment. They're struggling to make their
Hmm.
car payment.
Agreed.
So I think, it's like it's the validity of the question we ask, right?
Hmm.
You have to listen to what and why they're saying no. If they're just being reluctant to be reluctant and they think their house is worth more than
Hmm.
it is, and they have the wherewithal, they have everything, but they're just that's their personality. Well, then I think a decision has to be made, like Dominic said. Do we take the listing or do we not? Is this a workable solution? I feel like 100 out of 100, if it's because the person needs help, we're gonna do it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
Agreed. I think we are a service industry and a help industry, big time. Can I answer my own question?
yeah, it's rapid fire. You can do whatever you want.
Um, so,
It's our
you know,
podcast. We can do it.
we can do whatever we can do whatever we want. Um, this is a really common situation. And, when we go through different trainings and professional developments and things like that, I mean, there's academic ways to do things, and then there's the realistic way. And David is exactly right. I mean, sometimes they're just done in. And that's where I strongly believe my role to step in and help them close that gap. And I use that a lot. And I've learned over the years to prioritize what is the most important thing. And sometimes the most important thing is just to help them move items of furniture out of the house, just to reduce the amount of things inside and help them pack up tchotchkes and things like that. But there is no such thing as a perfect house, and there never will be. And sometimes the higher you go in price point, the buyer's going to spend more money changing everything that's already there. So, but yeah, I we help them choose the best, most cost-effective, biggest bang for your buck way to get their house sold, the fastest, the easiest, and for the most amount of money.
Dominic, what was your rapid fire?
Um, so my rapid fire is what was would your advice okay, I have kind of a two-part question. What is the number one piece of advice you would give to a first-time home buyer? And how might that differ than the advice you would give to someone who's, bought and sold two or three times?
Hmm.
Hmm. God.
We have a lot of great questions within Think Minnesota. I think for me,
Because you guys think.
oh, very good. For me, I grew up changing houses often. And I think that when you sometimes first time home buyers have the thought process that this is going to be their forever home. And that would be probably where I would start is where do they see this house fitting in? How set are they in their career? How set are they in their relationships or goals? Are there kids involved? Are there pets involved? Are there things like that? And the house that I'm in now, this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And I'm at 6 years. I mean,
Hmm.
I moved all the time. So the term home and house, I think, mean different to me. So that would be my conversation where somebody that's bought on their second or third house, they've been through it. Like, why have you moved? That would be my thought. That's a great question. Michael?
Um, my advice, if I was asked by the first time home buyer, is not to overwhelm themselves trying to find the perfect property. I I would advise them against purchasing something that actually had something that's called a deal breaker I mean, there should be a deal breaker with buying a property. But something that I learned over the course of time listening to other people is just real estate is a very fast moving freight train, and I would just say get the house, get in the game, get a property because you can trade up or you can trade laterally, but get in a property. Sometimes sometimes things that come up are a first-time home buyer. And first-time home buyer doesn't mean, low cost. I mean, a first-time home buyer can be buying a
Sure.
million-dollar house too. But a first-time home buyer in the entry-level price point, if they can kind of bite the bullet and be open-minded to a townhouse, you can get a quote unquote nicer property than if you were focused on that single family property in that exact same price point. So we have those conversations. And in the end, it's their choice.
That was a
Right
good
on.
one.
Yep.
All right, I
Very
have
good.
my third and final. Well, not I have like hundreds, but for today. Okay, December 2024. As an agent, is it harder to work with a buyer or a seller in today's market?
Hmm.
Uh,
Go ahead.
you get to go first, Dominic.
I'm thinking, what is it?
Ah,
Is it harder in December 2024 to work with a buyer or seller? My gut says buyer. I don't, just because I feel like it's the world is different for buyers a little bit. Just with the economy, interest rates, all this, the kind of the boilerplate stuff. But I think we're in this world still where our inventory levels are still lower compared to years past. There's fewer options, and so I think buyers are starting to feel that, and either not making a move because of it or settling for something maybe on the other side of it if they don't feel like they're getting what they want. To your point about deal breakers or whatnot, but I don't know. I generally feel like working with a buyer can be a little bit harder at this current moment in time.
Michael?
I am going to concur, and I'm going to say, in my opinion, right now, it's been harder it's been more challenging for me working with buyers. Um, I have kind of like a three-pronged reason for that. Number one, I call it the HGTV effect. It's like they walk in, and if there's one wall that needs to be painted or something's not exactly right, they just can't not focus on those things. That's one thing. The second thing is because the first time home buyer truly entering into the marketplace now, before they were really of age, remembers hearing about these interest rates that were in the twos. And, you know, they're being told that the interest rates are just astronomical. And right now they're not. I mean, if you look at the history of interest rates since they've been doing them, 6 to 8 is about average. So everybody is a PhD in economics, apparently, too, when it comes to interest rates and when the best time is to buy a house. The third thing is sometimes if you don't really have identified who the decision maker is, because sometimes the decision maker might not even be the person buying the house. The decision maker could be the person funding the house. So you have to just really make sure you know where the power lies. So those would be my answers.
Mine is the seller. Truthfully.
Really?
Why?
Really? No,
Well,
I really see. I've
I
just
think
really
right now
hunkered
in
down in the
today's
saddle of listings. So explain. That's interesting.
I
Yeah.
think if I think a buyer calls up and says, "Hey, I want you to work with me, send out paperwork, meet with them, go through the paperwork they sign, let's go look at houses." Boom.
Hmm.
A seller right now, in my personal business and what I'm hearing from our agents.
Hmm.
You get the listing. You have to be spot on your pricing. You have to nail that immediately now, like how it used to be. You're going to give
Not
showing.
necessarily.
Yeah, I think you do. I think it's
You
going
got
to fit otherwise. If you come in too high,
you have to be in the zone,
spot on. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, there's a wiggle. Yeah, not that big, this big.
but not on the high side. Always.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of it. And I also think right now that what I have seen is that when you have a showing, the showing isn't gonna, if you go on at 10 in the morning, you're not gonna have a showing at lunch. You're gonna have a showing maybe in a day, maybe the weekend, maybe down the road. And I think the sellers, we have to do such an amazing job right now of communicating to the seller what the process is going to be that if we don't do that well, they're going to be really wondering why there's not more people coming through, why there aren't more offers. We need to see and explain to them that the showings might be later on and that getting feedback right away. I think now more than ever, I'm having conversations with sellers about maybe having an inspection done. I'm talking to sellers about ways to get creative in what they're willing to do financially, whether that's price point or some type of concession or a home warranty or something. Like I feel like the seller needs to do a little bit more. I think there's a lot of consumers right now that feel like COVID time and they need to make a decision in the next 8 minutes and they're going to have multiple offers by dinner and they're going to be off the market by Friday. I think open houses are back. Like there's a lot of right now, I think sellers are harder.
Okay.
However, I historically over my career, I'm very much sellers to buyers. I'm about 65-35. I do more sellers than I do buyers for my
Interesting.
personal business.
Okay.
Um, I just think it's harder today. Now, I wouldn't have said that in May. I wouldn't have said that in March. That was the key, I think. So,
Mhm.
all right. So I think kind of that maybe wraps up the first episode.
We could have gone for days.
That's
We
right.
we could have gone without eating or even going to the bathroom. We could just go. But
You
it's
know,
but it
we
is but it is time to wrap it up.
Yeah. So
That's right.
going forward, we could add rapid fire. If anyone listening wants to reach out to one of us, submit a rapid fire. Number two is we need to come up with a name. Number three
Mhm.
is
Taking submissions for
um,
names.
guess, and
And the Three Stooges is not an option.
probably
That's right.
copyrighted. All right. Any
Anyway,
last, Michael, any last thoughts before we bid adieu and I maybe don't hit delete?
no, I have no last thoughts. I thought this was fabulous and in classic, mind. Just it's great when you get three people discussing different topics. It's just it just opens up your mind. It's classic grand rounds, you might say.
All right, so Mike, I don't even know what time it is, noonish.
Yeah.
Um, what are your next 5 hours of real estate work today?
Mine,
Yeah.
the next 5 hours of real estate work is I am well, first thing I'm going to deal is I have a call that's been trying to call me throughout this podcast because I'm working on a transaction at Red Wing that has a couple of snafus. Surprise, surprise. But we're going to work through them, get them taken care of. And then it's the end of the year, and I am knee deep in business planning for next year and getting my buyer's presentation all locked up with all the new regulations. And I just want everything documented and systematized. And this is, time of year to get that done.
Dominic,
How's that?
that was great.
Right on.
Dominic,
Mine
thoughts
is kind of
today and the next couple hours?
Yeah, I have to do some prep for a showing I have later this week. So I'm gonna do some research on a property and go through disclosures and share some information with the client. Get ready for that, and also working on a listing that I've got for sale. Going to be chatting with the planning and zoning department for that city and trying to get some information about possible new construction, so that I can arm potential buyers and their agents with information to make that as seamless as possible. And then kind of similar, thinking about next year and doing some business planning and think about maybe new marketing opportunities and what worked, reviewing what worked this year, what didn't work, and kind of optimizing my own kind of personal business operational spend and making sure that it's going to the best places possible. So little bit of client stuff and a little bit of personal business stuff.
Ask Chat GPT. That's my new
That's
thing.
right. That's right.
Less or more?
More AI, AI, AI. It's a great tool. It does help greatly. It doesn't replace, but it's a good helper.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.
Peace.
See you next time.